Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on the IHI Call 12 on financial aspects for single-stage calls. My name is Nasima, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Before we start, I just want to share some information with you. So firstly, we are recording this session, and we will be publishing it on the IHI website. We will also publish the presentation slides. The call was launched on the 15th of January, and all the links and details of how to apply are published on the Funding and Tenders portal and on the IHI website. Another important point, if you have any questions, you are welcome to send them anytime via the chat function on the bottom right of your screen. Just send them in to us and we will get them at the end of the presentation. Today, I have with me Gaëlle, who is Financial Officer, and she's going to kick off with the presentation. So now I will hand over to Gaëlle.
Thank you, Nasima. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the financial aspects of a proposal for Call 12, which is a single-stage call of IHI. So today, I'll first give you a brief introduction on IHI and Call 12 budget. Then I'll explain the different types of participants that you need to have in a consortium, the different types of costs that are composing a proposal's budget, and the different sorts of in-kind and cash contributions that are necessary to match the EU funding in your proposal's budget. I will also provide a concrete example on how to build a proposal's budget, and I will explain the steps you need to follow to submit it to IHI. And then we will end this webinar with a Q&A session. So first of all, a few words on IHI budget. So IHI is a PPP, public-private partnership, and has a budget of 2.4 billion for the whole program. So 50% of the funding comes from the European Commission, so it's public funding, and the other 50% is coming from the private sector. So more specifically, 1 billion is coming from our industry members, which are the trade associations COSIR, Europa Bio, MedTech Europe, and EFPIA, which also represents Vaccines Europe. And then there is also 200 million coming from contributing partners. And these are organizations who are not involved in these industry associations, but who want to contribute strategically to IHI specific objectives. And so, as you can see, there is that matching between public and private funding to fund our organization. And so the same matching principle also applies to the calls that we launch and to our projects. So concerning Call 12 budget, there are 5 topics and a total envelope of 163.1 million of EU funding. And so the equivalent amount is expected to be provided by private funds, since 50% matching needs to be reached at overall program level. And now, if we go further down at the level of a proposal of Call 12, in the call text, there is an indicative amount of EU funding per proposal in each topic, as you can see here in the first column. But note that those amounts are estimations only, so you can submit a proposal for more or for less than those indicative amounts. And then the equivalent amounts are expected to be provided by the industry in terms of in-kind and cash contributions. And here the 50% matching is a prudent approach recommended by IHI, but 45% is actually the formal minimum accepted at the proposal level. So who are the different types of participants in a consortium? First of all entities are allowed to participate in a proposal. There is no restriction. However, not all entities are eligible to receive funding. So for instance, US participants, they can participate, but they are not eligible to receive EU funding unless they are considered essential for the project by external evaluators. So which entities are eligible to receive EU funding? In a single stage call, it depends only on where the participant is established. So are eligible to receive EU funding these entities that are established in the EU or in one of the associated countries to Horizon Europe program. You have the link here to the whole list, or also entities that are established in a low or middle income country. But for call 12, there are some exceptions for topic 4 and topic 5. So in topic 4, entities from UK, Canada, Switzerland, and the Republic of Korea are not eligible for receiving funding. And in topic 5, entities from Republic of Korea and Switzerland are also not eligible for receiving EU funding. And this is actually because for those two topics, we used carryover funds from a budget year that is before the accession of these countries to Horizon Europe program. So in your consortium, you will also most probably have IHI private members. So those are the four trade associations I was mentioning before. But when we refer to IHI private members, we also refer to the members of these associations and to the entities that have a capital or legal link with these members or associations. And so all these different entities are considered IHI private members, and they are expected to contribute in kind and or cash in a proposal. Then you can also have contributing partners. So these are organizations interested to support IHI objectives. So by contributing in kind and or cash contribution to the proposal, but who are not members of the industry associations I was just mentioning before. And there is an application process to become a contributing partner. So these entities, they must submit an application letter to the IHI governing board as part of their proposal. And they need to be approved also by the governing board of IHI. So if you need more information on how to become a contributing partner, you can, there is a whole dedicated section on our website. You have the link here. And there is also a dedicated webinar that is organized on the 11th of February. So you can register via this link here. And then in a single stage call, you can also have hybrid participants. So these are private members or contributing partners. They have the particularity that they both contribute in kind and or cash to the proposal, and also request EU funding if they are eligible, of course. This is optional, but this is a possibility. And so to translate this into budget terms, the total eligible cost of a proposal, they are partly incurred by participants requesting the full reimbursement of their costs, and partly by private members and or contributing partners who contribute in kind and or cash contribution only, so they don't get any funding for these costs. And then potentially you can also have hybrid participants, since call 12 is a single stage call. And then besides the eligible cost of a proposal, you can also have private members who contribute in-kind contribution to additional activities. So this is what we call IKAA. I will come back to this term a bit later on. And so together, the private members and the contributing partners in a proposal, they must collectively bring enough contributions, so with their ICOP, their cash, their IKA, if any, to reach minimum 45% of the total cost of the proposal plus IKA, if there is any IKA. So this is an eligibility criterion, so it's very important, but I will come back to this key thresholds later on. So now let's go a bit more in detail through the different elements that are composing a proposal's budget. So you can split a proposal's budget into three parts: the estimated eligible costs, the estimated EU funding and other sources of financing, and then the contributions from private members and contributing partners. So let's first have a look at the different cost categories which are applicable to all participants in a proposal. So there are 5 cost categories, and all together they form the total eligible cost of a proposal. You need to estimate costs that you would incur for the proposal, and then already now at budget planning stage, you need to keep in mind the key principles for these costs to be considered eligible. whenever they will need to be reported to IHI in case your proposal is selected. And note that this concerns all participants, so also the ones who will contribute ICOP. So to give you a couple of examples, to be considered eligible, the cost, they should be actual, they should not include any profit margin, they should be recorded in the accounting system of the concerned entity, they should be necessary for the project, they should be documented because they may be audited at some point, etc., etc. So you can find the full list of all the eligibility criteria in the Article 6 of the Model Grant Agreement. You have the link here. And actually why it's so important, it is because only costs that are eligible can then be reimbursed by IHI or be considered as ICOP. So the first cost category, the personnel costs. In this cost category, you can include the estimated cost for your employees, for in-house consultants, for seconded personnel, and there is also a special unit cost for SME owners who are not paying themselves a salary. And there are different methods to calculate personnel costs. So make sure you check Article 6.2 of the Model Grant Agreement for getting the details on these different methods and also for getting concrete examples. The subcontracting costs. Here it's in case a beneficiary needs to outsource a project task to a third party, so outside the consortium. In this case, you have a contract between the beneficiary and the subcontractor, and it's based on business conditions since it includes some profit margin for the subcontractor. And here, what is important is to make sure that the subcontractor is selected, ensuring that there is no conflict of interest and ensuring the best value for money or the lowest price if it's appropriate. And what's not allowed here is to have subcontracting between beneficiaries in the same consortium. Purchase costs. So this includes cost for travel, for equipment, but only depreciation cost here can be considered, and also cost for other goods or services if it's limited in scope, meaning if it's not for project tasks. If it's bigger in scope, if it does concern project tasks, then it will be more considered as subcontracting costs. And then similarly to subcontracting, it is not allowed to have purchases between beneficiaries of the consortium. So it means that if a beneficiary needs supplies from another beneficiary, it is the second one that should foresee them as costs in its budget. Internally invoiced goods and services. So this cost category, it is when for when a beneficiary provides or produces itself some goods or some services to be directly used for the project. And it needs to be calculated as unit costs following the usual practice of the beneficiary. And then the last cost category, the indirect costs. It is a fixed flat rate, which is calculated as 25% of the direct cost, excluding subcontracting and excluding internally invoiced goods and services. So it's calculated automatically in the tool for all beneficiaries without any exception. So it means that you need to make sure that you do not include any indirect cost in the other cost categories. Otherwise, it would calculate indirect cost twice. So to make sure there is no double counting, no indirect costs need to be included in the other cost categories. So I will explain now that IHI private members and contributing partners can bring in a proposal for the matching of the EU funding. So there are three types of contributions. In-kind contribution to operational activities, what we call ICOP, financial contributions or cash, and in-kind contribution to additional activities, what we call IKAA. And as you can see, private members, they can bring all these types of contributions, while the contributing partners, they can only contribute ICOP and financial contribution, but not IKA. And so organizations that are not private members or not contributing partners, they cannot contribute any of these contributions to the proposal, and so they cannot contribute to the matching. So I will now explain you these different types of contributions a bit more in detail. And I will start with ICOP, which actually represents the biggest part of the contributions from private members and contributing partners in our project. So ICOP means in-kind contribution to operational activities, as I said. And as I said also, it is only for private members and contributing partners. And it consists of the eligible costs that these entities will incur in implementing project tasks. So that should be identified in the description of the action. And so these costs are not reimbursed by IHI. So it can be any of the 5 cost categories I mentioned before: personnel, subcontracting, etc. And usually the biggest part of ICOP comes from staff costs. And also companies providing ICOP, they are subject to exactly the same rights and obligations as any other beneficiary that signs the grant agreement. So it means that they have to fulfill the same cost eligibility criteria, they have to follow the same cost calculation methods, they have the same reporting deadline, the same reporting tool, etc. So now just two concrete examples to illustrate what can be considered as eligible ICOP and what not. So the first example concerns software license fees. So in case the software is developed by the entity, so let's say the private member, and the license fees are to valorize the use of that software by the consortium, this cannot be accepted as valid contribution because these fees are not actual costs for the entity. On the other hand, if the entity does pay some license fees to a third party, so external to the consortium, and during the project lifetime to use a software that is necessary for the project, this is considered as eligible contribution because the cost is real and recorded in the account of the entity. Another example, this one on data. So in case the entity wants to share some data that are pre-existing the project with the consortium, of course, these data, they do represent a scientific value for the project, but unfortunately, the cost for this data cannot be accepted as valid ICOP, as the cost for this data incurred before the project start. However, what could be considered as valid contribution are costs that the entity would still incur for this data during the project lifetime. For instance, costs for harmonizing or transforming this data. Here is the formula to calculate ICOP. So it's basically the difference between the eligible cost of a private member or contributing partner and its requested funding, if any. And you have here an example for a hybrid participant. But there is an annex to the budget that you need to submit as part of your proposal. And this annex, you will see, calculates the ICOP automatically. So it's pretty straightforward. I will come back to this annex to the budget a bit later on. Then for ICOP, there is also an important distinction to make between EU ICOP and non-EU ICOP. When we refer to ICOP, total ICOP, it includes the both types. So EU ICOP, it consists of the costs that are incurred within the EU or in a third country associated to Horizon Europe program, while non-EU ICOP, it is the opposite. So when the costs are incurred outside these countries. There are just some few exceptions for Call 12, as I mentioned before, so for topic 4 and for topic 5. So for instance, for Canada, the ICOP incurred in that country is considered non-EU ICOP in topic 4 and 5, while it's actually considered EU ICOP in topic 1, 2, and 3. And since we are funded by EU public funding, the matching must normally come from the private sector in Europe as well. However, up to 20% of the total ICOP can be non-EU. And this limitation of maximum 20% of non-EU ICOP, it is a limitation both at at program level, so for all calls together, but also at proposal level for call 12. So it's the same limitation. And again, this is automatically calculated in the annex to the budget. So what to do in case you have more than 20% non-EU ICOP in your proposal? Well, it still can be submitted. However, if your proposal is selected, then during the grant preparation phase, you will need to reduce this non-EU ICOP to maximum 20%, while still making sure that the minimum of 45% contribution is maintained, because it's an eligibility criterion. So now let's move on to the next type of contribution, the financial contributions. So this is when a private member or a contributing partner pays some cash to another beneficiary of the consortium to support part or all of its eligible costs for the project. For instance, it can be a pharma company who pays an academic partner to cover the cost of a PhD to work on the project. That's just an example. What is important is that it cannot count, that it can only count for the 45% contribution threshold if the beneficiary who receives the cash is eligible to receive EU funding. And another note here is that the financial contribution needs to be explained in the proposal part B. So there is a specific section on financial contributions in the proposal. And so you need to mention there who is paying the financial contribution, what is the amount, who receives it, and for doing what activities basically. Then the last type of contribution, so it is IKA, which means in-kind contribution to additional activities. But what do we mean by additional activities? So these are actually activities that contribute to the achievement of objectives of the IHI project or to the dissemination, the sustainability, or the exploitation of the IHI project results. These are not ICOP in the sense that they are not project tasks as per the description of the action, and that they are not essential for reaching the project objectives. These activities, they cannot be funded by IHI or any other funding program of the Union. They need to be carried out within the EU or in a third country associated to Horizon Europe program. And so they can be contributed by private members only, so not by contributing partners. And last but not least, these additional activities, they need to be described in the proposal annex on IKA. So there is a compulsory annex to be submitted with the proposal in case the proposal includes some IKAA. And in terms of limitation, IKA should not exceed 40% of the overall in-kind contribution provided by private members at program level, and there is no formal limitation at project level. Here you can see the main differences between ICOP and IKAA. I've been mentioning most of them already. What I haven't mentioned yet is that IKA is not subject to the cost eligibility criteria of Horizon Europe, unlike ICOP. And also the reporting deadline and the reporting tools are different for ICOP and for IKA. And they also have different timeframes. So for ICOP, the cost must be incurred during the project implementation to be eligible, so between the start date and the end date of the project, while for IKA, cost for additional activities can already be incurred from the proposal submission date and up to 2 years after the end of the project. So that's a major difference. So here you have some examples of activities that cannot be considered as IKA. So for instance, the preparation activities for the consortium agreement, since it's a mandatory prerequisite for all projects. Activities that are essential to reach project objectives, since these ones, they should be considered as ICOP. Or activities that are carried out outside the EU or the associated countries to Horizon Europe, or also activities for which the private member do not incur any costs during the eligibility timeframe. And you have here also some examples from previous calls of what has been proposed as additional activities. For instance, just to give you one example, after the project end, one of the additional activity was the development of training of a training program for ensuring a good use of the tools that were developed during the project. In case you have any question or doubts about IKA, feel free to contact the IHI office. We are here to help and to provide our expertise, and also check the guidance on IKA, which includes many other examples. So now that I've explained the three types of contribution, so ICOP, financial contribution, and IKA, this leads me to this key threshold for your proposal to be eligible, so in terms of budget, and which is to have a matching of minimum 45% contribution. So this is the formula to calculate that threshold, but don't worry, again, that's something that is automatically calculated in the annex to the budget. So basically based on the values that you will encode in your budget table, you will directly be able to see in the annex if your proposal reaches the 45% or not. So this threshold is very important because it's an eligibility criterion, which means that if it's not reached, then your proposal will not be considered as eligible and will therefore not be evaluated. And since this threshold is key, for the proposal submission, the project coordinator must actually upload a declaration on contribution, which is a mandatory annex to the proposal, to confirm that the commitment of the 45% contribution will be provided. This 45% can be reached with only one type of contribution or with several ones. So for instance, it can be reached only with ICOP. Also, as I already said, only private members and contributing partners, they can contribute to that threshold. And another important point is that it must be maintained during the whole project implementation. And so for this reason, we actually highly recommend to aim for 50% instead of 45, because we never know what can happen during the project lifetime. It could be that one private member cannot perform an activity in the end, which would reduce its ICOP, or it could be that a contributing partner decides to leave the consortium. So as a prudent approach, IHI highly recommends to have a matching of 50%, even if the formal minimum accepted is 45%. And now I come to the last part of the budget table, which is the estimated EU contribution and other sources of financing. So this part is to identify how the costs of the participants are covered. So first of all, cost can be reimbursed by IHI. The funding rate is automatically set to 100% and for all participants. So this actually gives the wrong impression that all participants, they can get the full reimbursement of their costs, which is obviously not the case, since they are private members and potentially also contributing partners in your proposal, and they must bring collectively at least 45% of the total cost in terms of contribution. So these costs cannot be reimbursed. Also, you may have some entities in your proposal who may simply not be eligible to receive funding. So they should request zero funding, obviously. Then you may also have other participants in your consortium who already plan to receive cash from a private member or from a contributing partner, and these costs, they cannot be funded twice. So no, not all participants get 100% of their costs reimbursed. And so for each participant of your consortium, the field requested EU contribution in the budget table needs to be encoded manually, and so it can be either positive or zero. Then the cost of a beneficiary can also be covered by the cash received from another source than IHI funding. For instance, with the financial contribution received from a private member or a contributing partner. In such a case, the beneficiary receiving the financial contribution must ensure that he does not request EU contribution for this cost already, because they are already covered by the financial contribution. And this is to avoid any double funding. And then a beneficiary can also cover its costs with its own resources. So this is basically when costs are not covered by EU funding or financial contribution from another source. And this field is mainly used by entities who are participating as associated partner in a proposal. So these entities, they cannot receive funding and they participate at their own cost. And this field in the budget table is always equal to 0 for the private members and the contributing partners, because their own resources is actually considered as their ICOP that they bring to the proposal. So now I will explain you how to submit a proposal budget. So the proposal budget is composed of two compulsory parts. One, the budget table in the part A of the proposal, which is automatically generated based on the budget that you will encode in the EC submission system. And then secondly, the annex to the budget and type of participant, for which you have the link here. It's an Excel table. And so why do we have those two parts? It's actually simply because the budget table in the EC system is standard for all EU grants, and so it does not capture our specificities, which are the different types of contribution. So IHI basically had to develop this annex to make sure that these contributions can be specified in the budget. So this annex to the budget is mandatory, and it must be submitted as part of the proposal. It's the only way to specify actually the ICOP or the non-EU ICOP, the financial contributions paid, and the IKA. But it's actually quite useful document because it calculates the different thresholds automatically for the non-EU, for the 45%, for IKA. Also, it prevents encoding values in the fields in some of the fields when they are not applicable. For instance, it prevents contributing partners to foresee or to plan some IKA. Since they are not supposed to bring IKA, this field is automatically set as not applicable, and so they will not be able to encode any IKA in the cell. It also make also some figures appearing in red when there is something wrong, etc. So it's quite useful. And this annex also contains 5 tabs. So the first one contains all the different links to the different instructions. And I will go through those different tabs now. So you have the type of participant tab. Sorry, this is the one you need to start with. So you need to specify basically the name of each participant and select their type from the drop-down list. Then after you've done that, you need to fill in the detailed budget tab. So there you need to enter basically the budget figures for each of the participants. And you will see that the names and the types of your participants that you've encoded in the previous tab are automatically pre-filled here. And then you have the simplified budget tab. This is an optional one. So it's a simplified budget in which you have only 3 rows. So you can do a quick check of the 45% eligibility threshold without having to enter the budget for each individual participant. So this can be useful to test different scenarios of budget. But again, it's optional. And then in the last tab of the annex, you have the results, which indicates if your proposal is eligible or not based on what you have encoded in the detailed budget tab. And it also indicates the percentage that you reach in terms of non-EU ICOP and IKA, if any. So now a very important slide to summarize basically the different steps for you to submit a proposal budget. So first, you need to start with the annex to the budget and type of participants and make sure you reach the 45% eligibility threshold. Then once you have encoded your budget in the annex and you are sure you reach the 45% and your budget is complete, then you need to encode that budget in the EC submission system and make sure that the exact same values are entered than in the annex, because in case there are discrepancies, the values in the EC system will prevail. And the last step is to upload the annex to the budget and type of participants in the EC submission system as part of the proposal submission. And also do not forget to also upload the annex on IKA and the annex for contributing partners in case your proposal includes those. So if you have IKA, you need to upload this annex, and the same for contributing partners. And yeah, be careful, because in the EC submission system, these annexes, they do not appear as mandatory, as you can see here on the screenshot. You see that there is no little red star, so which means they are not mandatory. This is because not all proposals have IKA and or contributing partners, obviously. But so in case your proposal does include some IKA, make sure you upload the annex. And the same if your proposal does include contributing partners, make sure you upload the signed application letters as an annex in the system. And this is very important, because if one of these annexes is missing while it should have been uploaded, it will impact the 45% of your submitted proposal, because IHI will need to recalculate the threshold, but without these contributions, which means that your proposal could potentially become ineligible if the recalculation of the threshold goes under 45%. And if your proposal is eligible and therefore evaluated, another impact of a missing annex is the fact that you will receive a shortcoming because the evaluators will not be able to assess the IKA and the contribution from contributing partners. So now, how to build a proposal budget concretely. So you can have two scenarios. In the first scenario, public partners are leading and are seeking matching from industry. And in the second scenario, industry is leading and seeking collaboration with public partners. So by public partners, I refer to those beneficiaries that are requesting EU funding only, and so who cannot bring any in-kind and or cash contributions. So it seems to me that the scenario 2 is the most common. So I will use this to show you a concrete example. Let's imagine that the EU funding available for the proposal is 10 million. And so the equivalent is expected to be matched by private members and or contributing partners. So the first step is to calculate the contribution that private members and or contributing partners they can bring. So in this example, you can see that they reach 10 million, which with a combination of IKA, of financial contribution, and IKAA. So they have the three types of contributions here. But again, it's not necessary to have all the types of contribution in a proposal. It's only one type is sufficient. Then the second step, is to calculate the remaining EU funding available for the public partners in case they are hybrid participants. So in this example, for instance, you can see that there are 2 hybrid participants who request a total of 4 million, which means that for the 10 from the 10 million, 6 remain available for the public partners. Then the next step is to bring those public partners in the consortium and allocate the remaining funding of the 6 million between them. So in this example, you can see that 3 public partners, they have joined the consortium in green, and they request together the 6 million. Some of their costs are also covered by financial contributions from a private member, And one beneficiary is also covering some of its costs with its own resources. It's the case of the large company Y. But so in total, you can see that the total contribution is matching the requested EU funding, which is 10 million. So you can encode this in the annex to the budget, in the simplified budget tab, which I recall is optional, and then directly see that the proposal reaches more than 45%, so which is very good because it means your proposal is eligible. It appears in orange, as you can see, because it is under 50%, which is the prudent approach that IHI recommends. So if you want, you can also test different budget scenarios using this simplified budget tab to see if you cannot increase this percentage up to 50%, but this is optional. 45 is already acceptable. But so it's just to show you an example on how you can play with this, with having different budget scenarios in this simplified budget tab. You see, for instance, in this example, that the requested funding of a hybrid participant has been decreased. So automatically it increased their ICOP, and so the total contribution increased and reaches now 51% of the total cost and IKA, which is even better than before. And so it turned green. And then the next steps are to encode the detailed budget in the annex, then in the EC submission system, and then to upload in the system the annexes for the budget, but also for IKA and for the contributing partner, since it is applicable in this example. And then you are ready for your proposal submission. Here I've listed some useful links to important documents for when you will prepare your proposals budget. And I'm done with this presentation.
Thank you, Gael, for this presentation. So before moving to the Q&A session, I would like to promote the other webinars that we have for Call 12. So tomorrow morning, we will have a webinar on the content of the call topics. And in the afternoon, we will have the rules and procedures webinar. We will also have, as Gael was mentioning, a dedicated webinar on contributing partners on the 11th of February. So I'm inviting you to register if you haven't done so. Now we can move on to the Q&A. And as you can see, we have been joined by Desmond Barry. So Desmond Barry is our legal officer, and he will support us during the Q&A session. So the first question is, are UK entities eligible for EU funding for topic 135?
Gail, will I take that one or?
Gael, you muted.
Yeah.
Feel free to take it, Desmond.
Okay, yeah, we have some guidance on this now on the IHI FAQ document, but for UK applicants, topics 1 to 3 are fine, and then topics 4 and 5. Topic 4 they kind of actually receive funding, and topic 5 they can receive funding. I think no, can't receive funding. That was it. They're the two. I'll just double check that now. 1 to 3 definitely yes.
Thank you,
Stephen, do you want to take the next
Desmond.
question? I'll just double check on topic 5.
Okay, thank you, Desmond.
Yeah.
Uh,
Joe's already. Thanks, Joe. Joe's already answered. She's confirmed that they are eligible for topic 5. So I shouldn't have second guessed myself.
So the second question is, I'm the UK National Contact Point for Horizon Europe Health, and I work at the UK Research and Innovation. Just to confirm that. Okay, it's a confirmation from the NCP, the UK NCP, that UK Government Horizon Europe Guarantee does not cover UK organization under call topic 4. under the IHI Call 12. So it's not a question, it's a confirmation from the UK NCP. Thank you for that. Another one, can USA and Switzerland partners participate as beneficiaries?
So USA, okay, let me start the basics first. So USA are considered what's called a third country first. They're the easy ones in this answer. So if you're coming from the US, you're coming from a third country. If your legal entity, if your company is established or your university is based there, you are very welcome to participate in IHI Call 12, but you are not eligible to receive funding. The logic is that the US has not, it's not an EU member, nor has the US signed an association agreement with Europe, which allows US entities to receive funding in IHI calls. That said, there is an extremely small possibility, but it is nevertheless the possibility that US entities could receive funding from IHI if they're bringing something really unique and really special to a project, which a project cannot really do without. We're going to deal with this in more detail, if you'll forgive the shameless plug. We'll deal with this in more detail in the rules and procedures webinar tomorrow, which Naseema has already mentioned. So if you're asking these sorts of questions, I'd really strongly recommend that you attend or register for this meeting now. We do it for every call, and people find it extremely useful and informative. And in relation to the Swiss again, for calls 1 to 3, you're fine. For calls 4 and 5, the problem is that it depends upon which year the funding is actually drawn from, because Swiss entities were not actually signed up for these years when the funds that we're using were drawn from. I know it's a little complicated, but what it basically means is topics 4 and 5, they use funding from years 2024 and 2025, depending upon the topic. And then because those were sometimes from before Switzerland Association, it can't be signed. So I'd refer you to, again, the calls and procedures tomorrow. We're going to go into this in a bit of detail, and we'll be able to break it down entity by entity, year by year, and you'll get full visibility. And if you can't wait for then there'll also be some detail in the work program, which we've actually released.
Thank you, Desmond. And I can see in the chat that we also get an answer from the Swiss NCP telling us that, yeah, you can reach to Nicole Wyss and Sasha Hugentobler, and they send their email addresses. So the next question is it mandatory to include IHI private members in a consortium?
So this is a good one, and again, this question is more usual for the rules and procedures webinar, but I think Gail and I were discussing this earlier, and I think it's coming up here because this financial webinar is happening before the rules and procedures. It's a very, very relevant question, and thank you for asking it. The simplest answer we can give, and I don't want to derail Gail's financial webinar, we're going to talk about this again tomorrow, is simply put, it's advisable because the IHI model, as we know, is by its nature collaborative. And the idea is a proposal is supposed to include, the full plethora of IHI entities. So, you're supposed to bring in your universities, you're supposed to bring in industry, bringing in private members because they're integrally part of the wider IHI collaboration is definitely advisable, because when your proposal goes to the independent experts are going to say, well, okay, this is a very interesting proposal, and this consortium is an interesting consortium, but they're going to look for representation from all sectors. So if you don't have what we in IHI call a constituent or affiliated entity, basically a company or somebody or companies who are attached to the private members, then at the proposal evaluation stage, your proposal will not score as highly as other proposals which do have private members or their constituent or affiliated entities in there. So the short, clear answer I can give you now, again, without derailing the financial discussion, is yes, you should have them in there in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Desmond. And the next one is from an SME asking, to be a hybrid partner, should we submit a request as for a contributing partner only?
So if you're asking this question, two things. One, again, come to our rules and procedures tomorrow, but more importantly, if you're contemplating being a contributing partner, my colleague in the legal team, Carolina, does a dedicated, extremely comprehensive and quite entertaining contributing partner webinar, and that will happen in February, and I would really urge you to attend that. We'll deal with it tomorrow though, but the short answer is that if you're looking for that hybrid model whereby you're going to request funding, but then you also want to contribute and you think you can contribute in kind or make a financial contribution, then yes, contributing partner may be the vehicle to use, but contributing partners fall under, and Caroline will go into this in a lot of detail, but they fall under a particular kind of rule scheme. There's a letter that has to be submitted. We ask, a lot of detail to make sure two things. One, that the SME is capable of kind of introducing and providing the in-kind that they're talking about, and more importantly, has the facility and the ability to contribute meaningfully to the project. So if you go to the website at the moment in advance of Carolina's webinar, and you take a look at the contributing partners area, there's a stack of template letters there. There's the contributing partner guide, which is extremely useful and very clearly written. And you might find that useful to start off.
Can I add something here? So I presume as an SME, you would request the full reimbursement of your costs. So this hybrid construction, it only works if this SME is either a private member or if this SME applies to become a contributing partner. This, because the entity must be either one or the other, so either a private member or a contributing partner, to be able to contribute any in-kind or cash. And yeah,
and just to supplement that point, so if you are I'm sure Gail's mentioned this already, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, and Caroline is very firm on this in her webinars. If you are associated with private members already, then you cannot be a contributing partner. So that needs to be made really clear as well.
Thank you both. The next question is, if we have a company for project management, is the cost eligible?
So any cost that is necessary for working on the project, any costs that are incurred during the project implementation, incurred in the accounting system of the entity, and so on and so on. There are different criteria that need to be fulfilled for cost to be eligible. So this is in Article 6 of the Model Grant Agreement, but I presume project management costs are, of course, eligible for the IHI project, yes.
Thank you, Gail. Now we have, is a self-employed person considered an SME or a natural person for the costs?
It would be more a natural person, self-employed person, in my opinion. But again, there can be so many different scenarios, basically, that I think the best approach is to read the Article 6.2. This details really very well the different scenarios, the different costs, personal costs, subcategories, so to say, so that you can clearly identify what is the best option that fits your case. Yeah, and there is the model grant agreement, but also the annotated model grant agreement, and the annotated one is probably better because it contains really like concrete examples, special cases, annotations. So I would recommend anyone reading this article and going through these different elements to make sure you estimate the cost properly in the right cost category.
Thank you. The next one, can a startup request funding?
Yes, why not?
I mean, well,
so,
sorry, Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, no, feel free. But I wanted to explain the different, criteria for being eligible to receive funding in a single stage call. It depends where you are established. If you are based in the member states or in the associated countries to Horizon Europe or in one of the low and middle income countries, then yes, you are eligible to receive funding, whatever the type of organization you have, whether it's academics, large company, patient organization, or startup. I would
Yeah,
say.
I think if we're talking about a startup, then my only concern would be, I agree completely with what Gail said, as long as you meet the basic criteria for eligibility, or for example, you're from the EU or an associated country, you're a legitimate independent legal entity, then you're at the start you're fine. Then just for the startup who may not be familiar, it needs to be borne in mind that then you have to go through the steps to get yourself validated within the system, to get what's called a PIC number, to get yourself set up where you can plug into the grant agreement, and then you can basically then request the funding that you're thinking of. So Gail's completely right. There's a bit of work to be done, but it's definitely possible.
Thank you. Then we have, what about conference participation? Which category does it belong to, and is it eligible?
So yes, it's eligible. You have, as part of your proposal, also a dissemination, which is normally a mandatory deliverable, and as part of this, you may need to attend conferences, I suppose. And anyway, again, if it's necessary, to reach project objectives, if you need to attend such conferences as part of your project object, if it's necessary for your project objectives, yes, it is eligible, and you can include this in the travel, I suppose. Yeah, and the travel, so it will be under purchase costs.
Thank you. Someone is stating that they are an international organization with a European branch. Are they eligible for funding?
So that's the word that Gail and I love, which is branch, which has a definite, which has a certain connotation under the Article 6 that Gail has just been talking about. So how about this? If you're an international organization and you have a subsidiary or a group member in Europe, then that separate entity can receive funding. I would anticipate that they could receive funding. If you're an international organization which has a branch, and it is definitely a branch in the sense that it does not have an independent legal existence under the jurisdiction in which it is found, then things get a bit more complicated, and there's also complications in relation to getting it registered. So I'm not saying no, I'm just saying that more work needs to be done. And then you describe yourself as an international organization, and then we have to ask the question, are you an international organization as defined under the legislation, or are you an European interest organization, or are you something like the WHO? So if on this question, rather than really derail the financial regulation, what I'd suggest is it may be worth contacting the IHI legal team at the functional mailbox, and we can actually answer this one in detail. I think Katarina would be able to put together quite a good response for you. It depends upon exactly the nature of who you are, and then we would apply the rules, which can have quite different outcomes depending upon what your exact status is.
Thank you, Desmond. The next question is on ICOP. So when a company is involved, are the personal costs of the company members eligible as ICOP?
Yes, of course. So the personal cost is one of the 5 cost categories. So ICOP consists of the eligible cost that this company incurs for the projects. And so obviously the staff is usually the biggest cost of ICOP actually that we have in our project. So yes, the personnel of the entity is considered as personal cost and can therefore be considered as ICOP. Yes.
Thank you, Gail. The next one is on contributing partners, and the person is asking, are universities, for example, the contributing partners? You mentioned that they can also contribute in ICOP. Does this mean even in-kind contribution of universities can be counted as part of the 45% threshold costs?
I got to say, guys, I'm quite impressed with the level and the complexity of the questions today. These are good. Okay, to keep it very simple, as Gail said earlier on, and as I said, Carolina is going to develop in a lot more detail in her webinar. Contributing partners do indeed contribute in kind, which can be things like FTEs, which can be time spent on the project by people who are working on it. as long as you follow Gale's golden rule and your costs are compatible with the Article 6 in the grant agreement. This is all fine. And indeed, if a contributing partner is in a single stage call and they are contributing in kind, then that in kind can count towards the 45% threshold. This is all fine. But tying into what Gail was also talking about, it gets a bit sticky if you have a contributing partner who's coming to the governing board, and Carolina will explain this in detail. The governing board basically wants to see contributing partners that are actually going to contribute. So if you come to the governing board and you say, look, we want to contribute 2 million in kind, but we're also going to request 2 million in funding, then you're essentially zeroing out your contribution. And the governing board may not be a huge fan of that equation. So while I would yes, this is possible, but I would also advise maybe exercise moderation. And if you are indeed applying to be a contributing partner, make sure that at the end of the day, you're actually contributing, rather than just using the CP as a vehicle to contribute towards the 45%, because the governing board who make the ultimate decision as to whether someone becomes a CP, a contributing partner or not, they are aware of this, and it is a sensitivity. So we try to flag this for people in advance. So, but actually, that's an excellent question. It's very, very relevant, and thank you for submitting it.
Thank you, Desmond. The next one is, do FPI members receive EU contributions?
In a single stage call, as long as the general eligibility rules are followed, strictly speaking, the constituent and affiliated entities of the private members are eligible to receive funding. Thus far, for the entirety of the IHI program, constituent and affiliated entities of FPA have not requested funding, and to my knowledge, have not received funding.
Thank you. Is it mandatory for an SME to provide any ICOP, IKAA of FC?
No, so as I said, only private members and contributing partners, they can contribute ICOP, IKA, NFC. So SMEs, if they are not either private member or contributing partner, they cannot contribute any in-kind or cash contributions, actually. And they are expected, on the contrary, they are expected to request funding for the cost they will incur on the project.
Thank you. Here we have a question from a person working in I'm reading the question because it's quite long. So we would appreciate advice on how to budget personal costs for volunteers in an IHI project. The individuals are not employed, but their work is formally managed by our organization, which is registered as both a non-profit and a small limited company. As the project manager, my own effort is already budgeted in person month. Is there an accepted approach under IHI rules to reflect volunteer contribution? For example, via unit cost, in-kind contribution, or other mechanisms?
So yes, again, it's in Article 6.2 of the Model Grant Agreement. In the personal cost section, there is a section specifically for volunteer work. So I'm sure you can find concrete examples there. Yes. So I'm pretty sure in the annotated model grant agreement you can find some help, and but yes, there is a specific section just for that.
Thank you, Gail. Another person would like to have more clarification that as private or contributing partners, whether they can both contribute in kind and also request funding themselves.
Yes, so indeed, in a single stage call like call 12, you may have hybrid participants, which are indeed private members or contributing partners who both contribute and request funding. So this is a specificity of single stage call, so it is applicable to call 12, yes.
Thank you. Is it allowed for a beneficiary in one IHI consortium to subcontract work to an entity that is a beneficiary in a different IHI consortium?
Yes, that's okay because it's a third party from the concerned consortium. So yes, it is allowed as per the model grant agreement because they're not part of the same consortium.
But that just to emphasize before people get super excited, because we get this question a lot. Subcontracting between beneficiaries, between different projects, fine, because as Gail has correctly said, they're a third party with regard to each other, so we're fine. Subcontracting between beneficiaries in the same project is an absolute no-no, and it's prohibited by the rules. So the idea is everyone comes to a particular project with a sense of collaboration. They're not there to basically commercialize towards each other. So between separate projects, fine. Inside the same project, absolutely not, under no circumstances.
Thank you both. Can data generated prior to an IHI project and made available for the execution of the project be valorized as IKAA?
So for IKA, the cost they can indeed be incurred already before the project starts. So from the moment the proposal is submitted. So yes, cost can be incurred before the project starts, but it needs to be cost. So again, we talk about data. There is no question of valorizing those data to something that is not a cost. So because again, IK will need to be audited, and the auditors, they check if the cost is recorded in the accounts of the entity. So it needs to be traceable. On the other hand, IKA is not subject to the cost eligibility criteria of the model grant agreement, unlike ICOP, and is valued following the usual cost accounting practices of the entity. So it really depends how the entity usually records the cost for this data, and then if it appears in the accounting system of the entity, and if it incurs during the eligibility timeframe of IKA, which indeed starts already before the project start date, then it could potentially be considered as a valid IKA.
Maybe I'll just develop for ECOP, because again, the lawyers, we get this question a lot, and I'll just
But for ICOP, no. And there is a specific slide on that in the presentation.
Yeah, so I think just to remind everyone, because frequently we have people who come to IHI and they basically say, look, I have this data which we generated 4 or 5 years ago, and we attach a value of 2 million to the data, and we would like to get this valorized rather as in kind or something else. So as Gail correctly said, there has to be a cost involved here pretty much during the lifetime of the project. So if you incurred a cost of 2 million gathering data 5 years ago, that's nothing to do with the actual project. So we're not going to allow you to valorize that data for a value of 2 million, but the cost that you use may be introducing that data into the actual project, curating the data during the project. I think that would be an acceptable cost. But in these kind of situations, you do need to be careful, and you do need to, if you're not sure, just connect with the IHI team, and we can give you advice on that. But the key point is that the guideline, which I think is useful, is if it's something which is appearing as a line item, in your accounts during the lifetime of the project, that's a good place to start. If it's something which happened 5 years before, then that's you're not going to be able to valorize that.
Thank you. Now we have a question on hybrid models. So there may be some confusion regarding the hybrid model. It used to be that organizations associated with private members can both provide contribution, cash, ICOP, IKAA, and receive EU funding. Has this changed? Should now the same organization also ask to become the contributing partner to be eligible for the hybrid model?
So no, I think there is indeed a confusion here. So entities that apply to become contributing partners, they cannot be private members, so they cannot be part of any of the trade associations. So that's the first condition to become contributing partner. And this hybrid model remains the same. So yes, a private member can both contribute in kind and receive funding. There is no you don't need to apply for that. From the moment you are a private member, so a member of one of these associations, you can both contribute and receive and receive funding, since call 12 is a single stage call, so we can have hybrid participants. And the contributing partner so needs to apply to become contributing partner, and in that application letter needs to specify how much he can commit, how he can contribute to the objectives of the IHI, but also to the proposal. And also there is a budget table in which he can mention how much of EU funding he requests. And so the ICOP of that contribution is, of that contributing partner, is the difference between what they can, between their total cost and what they request as funding. And the difference is equal to the ICOP. I hope it clarifies, but it hasn't changed.
Maybe the soundbite should be, at the risk of overemphasizing this or over repeating it, if you want to contribute in kind and potentially financial contributions, you have two choices. You're either private member or one of their constituent or affiliated entities, or you're a contributing partner in this single stage call. And if you're one of those categories, because this is a single stage call, you can also receive funding. I think that's probably the clearest way we can express it. So you one or the other, not both.
Thank you. Another question, are costs related to training, example courses, learning a tool for the project, are eligible?
So normally the personnel is supposed to be trained, to have the capacity to work on the project and to be skilled enough to work on the project. So normally training, like general training, not, unless you can really justify that the training is like specific to some specific skills that needs to be developed for the project specifically. Yes, but so it depends how it is justified.
Thank you both. There is another questions. Are all companies somehow affiliated with the participating industry association? For example, in our case, a member in an association that is a national association, associate member in MedTech Europe, automatically considered part of IHI, or do they have to apply as contributing partners?
Yeah, so let me start with, again, you're either one or the other.
Yeah.
You're either a contributing partner or you are somehow affiliated with the private members. But the short answer to the question is not all companies are automatically affiliated with the private members, but there are a lot of them because, and I think you're kind of alluding to this in your question, you can be an SME, for example, in Dublin, where I'm from, and if you're an SME in Dublin, but you are a member of the Irish Pharmaceutical Association, which is then associated with the FPA, the European Pharmaceutical Association, then of course you're an affiliated entity of FPA. So it's a wide, the trade associations are, what we call a broad church, each of them. So we're not surprised when we see what we would normally think of as independent companies somehow associated with the industry trade associations. But there's also an awful lot of other independent entities who are not associated. And in those cases, if they're not associated with one of the private members, and as I said, they do want to contribute in kind and FCs and want to get further involved in the project, then that's why we have the contributing partners vehicle, so they can do that.
Thank you, Desmond. We have another question. How much time does it take to apply for becoming either a private or a contributing partner?
Private member we can't speak to because the private members are very different from from the IHI program office, and there are 4 of them, and they all have different rules. So, but if you're thinking about this now, I'd recommend contacting them after this meeting, and inquiring about their membership process and fees, et cetera, et cetera. We can't speak to that. In relation to the contributing partner application process, it's difficult to give timelines because there's a number of factors, but what we normally recommend is from the time you send the first draft contributing partner application letter to us, or the first time you insert it, you could be looking at 6 to 8 weeks. Now, the rules on this depend upon the call, but the point is that it takes a little bit of time to work through the process. So if you're thinking about being a contributing partner, don't leave it to the last minute. Go to the website, look at the templates, but more importantly, attend Carolina's webinar in February, because your letter should be part of the proposal that goes in, as Gail talked about earlier on, but it takes time to do, to get it finalized.
Thank you. And the next question is also on contributing partners. And the person is asking, is there a limit to the number of contributing partners per proposal?
No,
but, and to go back to the really good question we had earlier on, it's better if all of your 45% is not coming just from contributing partners. It's better if you have some industry constituent or affiliated entities of the private members in there as well. So Carolina has handled 5, 6, 7, 8 contributing partners in a single project. It's doable, but that's not necessarily the most efficient way to build a consortium, because you do need the private members in there as well.
Thank you. The next one is, what determines affiliation with the private member?
So it's nebulous because the different private members have different views on this. But as I said, the guideline is, if you are a company in Dublin and you're a member of the Irish Pharmaceutical Association and they're a member of FPA, then that's your affiliation, right? You don't need a specific legal contract between your entity and FPA, for example. So the advice that we give, because sometimes people come to us and say, are we members of FPA? Are we members of COSIR? The IHI program office can't answer that. So our practical advice is, if you suspect you are, then you should contact the private members themselves. Or if you are a member of a local or a national association, contact the association in which you are a part of and say, look, if I am a member of you, am I a member or an associate or an affiliate of COSIR, FPA, Europa Bio, MedTech? And they will tell you, and then you'll know what your status is. Because when your proposal comes in, and as it goes through the evaluation process, and if it gets towards gap, at some stage, IHI, we will need certainty as to exactly what you are. And then if it turns out that someone that we were expecting was a contributing partner is in fact, a member of a trade association, then that can change the landscape somewhat. So the onus, the responsibility is on you, not the program office, not the private members, to ascertain exactly what your status is. And then that should be accurately reflected in the proposal.
Thank you, Desmond. Still on the contributing partners, someone is asking, until when can draft application letters to become a contributing partner be sent to IHI for a review, if this is still possible?
So as I think Gail had a slide on this, and I know Carolina is again going to talk about this in a lot of detail. The letters need to be part of the proposal that is submitted. Now, as I said, there's a template on the website which you will download. We would prefer that the letters were good. So if you have questions in relation to the template letters, you can contact the IHI office and we can take a look at the draft letter. But they must be included in the proposal. And Gail has developed some language in relation to this recently. There's language in the contributing partner guide. We're going to talk about it briefly in the rules and procedures webinar tomorrow. And we're going to talk about it in Carolina's dedicated contributing partner. I think it's the February the 8th. 11th.
The 11th, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're asking these questions on CPs, guys, you absolutely positively must register for Carolina's webinar on the 11th of February. Otherwise, you're going to be placing yourself at a disadvantage.
Thank you, Desmond. I can take the next one because someone is asking, is there a matchmaking aid to find private partners? So we do have a brokerage platform for call 12 only. So we opened it last year just before a brokerage event. So it's a platform where we have over 100 participants. I mean, all the ecosystem is represented there. So you have industry members, public partners, you have SMEs, you have consultancies. I mean, a lot of people are there. And you also have the project ideas that people have. So we have over 100 proposals in the tool. So you can go and look at them, and you can also reach out to the people that you want through the platform. And we also have the people pitching during our brokerage event, so you can find their pitches there. So I do encourage you to go to the platform, and I can see that my colleague just shared the link in the chat. I don't see any more questions. No, I guess we can close this webinar.
Maybe Nassima, what we
Yeah,
can
sure.
mention is that applicants, whenever they have questions on financial aspects, they can send them to the mailbox finance@ihi.europa.eu.
Yeah.
Maybe we can mention this on the last page of the slide of the presentation as well.
It will be added. And as a reminder, so we will be publishing the slides and the recording. We hope to do it today, but let's see. If not, it will be tomorrow at the latest. So I will say thank you to Gael and Desmond. Gael for the presentation and also for the question, and Desmond for supporting Gael for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for your interest, and I wish you good luck with your proposal. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.